Good evening, everyone. I hope you are doing well tonight. I'm just going to check in and make sure everything's set up before we get started. If you can leave a chat message letting me know if everything's good on your end, if you can hear everything and see everything. I have a bit of information to share with you on a presentation and also some other things. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, so the chat is open for everybody to communicate, and I will do my best to watch it. I will check back in at the end as well with any questions and things like that. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it a ton because I get really nervous about that. So this class is being recorded, and it will be available on my YouTube channel, Healthy Families for God, and along with all of our other past classes that are on there. We have one on hormones, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight, and adrenal health, which we'll also talk a little bit about tonight, because all of that does go into the topic of weight. So before we begin, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Jo Poff. I am the person behind Healthy Families for God. It's just me. I used to have an assistant, which was my daughter, but she started college and got another really awesome job. And so it's me. My boys do help me sometimes as well. But I started this blog. It was just a blog I started about over 10 years ago, just because I had a passion to share the health information that I was discovering as I was finding it. And I just thought this whole world opened up, and I wanted to just join in with some other people and just share the information and have everybody else kind of learn together with me. And so as I've done that, we've built a really great community here. We've got lots of people in this awesome Healthy Families for God community. So I am thankful for you. Some of you have been around for a very long time with me on this journey, and you are truly a blessing to me. Tonight, I want to talk about the topic of weight, not in a vain way. So I just want to put that up there right up front. I do not want to talk about this topic from a perspective of how we look on the outside. I want to address this topic from the perspective of honoring our body as the Lord's temple in a way that honors Him. All glory for anything that we do and achieve and learn goes to Him. And I pray that this wisdom is something that blesses you, and that is what the Lord wants you to hear tonight. So I have a suggestion for you for this class. My recommendation is to get out something that you can take notes on, and also make sure that you are just kind of processing this in a place of grace for yourself, because I know sometimes I might cover some things that we've done wrong with our health because we didn't know any better. And so I don't want you to just be kicking yourself for the things that you did when you didn't know better. On your paper, I want you to have two columns. One of them is what I should keep doing. So write down or jot down notes of the things that you are doing right, that you need to continue on doing. Maybe you've been doing some things for your health regimen and you didn't know that they were really good. Are they working? Are they doing anything? And maybe tonight you'll get some confirmation that some of the things you're doing are. So write those down in that column. On the second column, write down what I need to start doing. And these are going to be the things that you're learning about tonight that you maybe didn't know, or maybe you did know, but you just needed a little bit more information or motivation to do those things for your health. So I want this information to be very doable and simple. I know that there's a lot that goes into this. So when it comes to weight, there are two different main perspectives in the medical community. Number one is the perspective of just excess calories. So it's taking in too many calories, and that causes the weight gain. Then there's this other one that has to do with some of the stuff we'll talk about tonight, which is insulin and blood sugar and things like that, which we'll also talk about tonight. But as the medical community collaborates and talks about these two things, they discover obviously that it's not just that simple, and it's not one or the other. So we're going to cover all of that tonight. My goal is to help you pinpoint which of these really is what may be going on with your body, because every body is truly different. and then use that information to personalize what you can do for your health. Again, like I said, this isn't just a vain effort. It's not about how we look on the outside. This is really just about honoring our body as the Lord's temple and doing so in a way that gives us the best possible lifestyle in order to be able to do the purpose that we've been created to do. And again, I share this picture because there are people with metabolic issues that can look like it from the outside, from what we might think of it as excess weight. And there are people who maybe don't look like it, that maybe we would call thin or not overweight. And the case here is that anybody can have metabolic issues regardless of what their physical appearance is. That said, there are a lot of things that come with excess weight that increase all of the risk of all causes of death, that increase high blood pressure risks and a lot of these other things, increased risk for type 2 diabetes, more likely to have hormone imbalance, cancer, stroke, gallbladder disease, osteoarthritis, sleep problems, including apnea, physical functioning problems, weak joints and ligaments. And then one other thing that we want to talk about too is that the more fat cells we have, which doesn't necessarily mean we look fat or how somebody might call that, but that because there can be visceral fat, which is the fat around the organs. But the more fat cells that we have, the more toxins our body can store. And obviously that's not ideal. When I am scanning people on health scans, this device that I use, one of the biggest things I see on there that's the biggest problem for people is toxicity. Their bodies are just overly toxic, and we can't really do much about what's in the environment around us other than just make sure that we're helping our body process and eliminate those toxins as they come at us. So again, there is no one size fits all. My goal is not to demonize any foods, but that said, there are some foods and diet trends that can be extremely harmful for people's health. And, you know, having an audience of almost 50,000 people, I'm getting messages from people whose health is being destroyed by these things. And they're not talking about it online. I think that there's a lot of shame that goes with that, which is unfortunate because there's no shame in that. You know, and some of these things I've had to learn the hard way too. For instance, juicing. I used to notice that when I would drink fresh pressed juice, whether I juiced it myself at home or bought it from a really good store, that I would feel really icky afterwards. And we called it detox. But what was really happening was my blood sugar was spiking horribly and my body was having to go on this blood sugar roller coaster, and it was really messing with my metabolism. We also found out the hard way that how it affects blood sugar, because when my son was, before he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, he was very sick and we thought it was the flu. And what do we do with the flu? We do juices, right? Fresh juice. We did carrots, we did a little bit of apples, and it quickly made his body near death. And it skyrocketed his blood sugar into the 600 range. And he ended up in the hospital in DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. And they couldn't figure out why he had gone downhill so fast. And I knew it was because of the juicing. So again, this isn't a one size fits all thing. Everybody is different, but these are just some of the things that we see some issues with, where people are maybe hopping onto something that seems healthy and it's really destroying their health. And maybe not right away. Sometimes these things take time. But also you can definitely tell by how you feel. Another one of these things that can cause problems is intermittent fasting. And there are some really great people out there, health professionals, who are realizing this and they're talking about it and they're saying, hey, men, this is great for you. But women, especially women who are cycling, we really need to rethink that. And the biggest problem I'm seeing is how it really exacerbates or contributes to adrenal issues, which are very big right now. I review lab tests, and I'm seeing that is one of the biggest problems we as women are facing right now, and some men as well, because of some prolonged, physiological, psychological, mental stressors, and all of these things, and lack of sleep, raising our babies, and things like that. And so the intermittent fasting is something that our body is actually sensing as a stressor, which is contributing to the progression of adrenal disease or dysfunction. And sometimes the problem with that is that we might feel okay while we are intermittent fasting, or we might say, well, I don't feel hungry in the morning, and so it just works for me. But the problem with that is if we don't feel hungry in the morning, that's a really big red flag that says our body is definitely under some serious stress. So we are seeing some of these same problems that we see with juicing, with high fruit diets as well. We've been sharing in some of our groups the blood sugar roller coaster that high fruit diets take people on, which is a catalyst for all of these metabolic diseases and issues that come along with that. So one of the questions that came through is, how do you define intermittent fasting? So honestly, it's any type of fasting that's more than what an overnight fast would be, a regular overnight fast of, approximately 12 hours or so. So the thing that we notice is that if those, and I wouldn't say that we could just assume at this point that your adrenals need support, but I would be close to saying that at this point, just because of what I'm seeing on lab tests and health scans that I do. It's pretty much the thing with everybody right now, especially most women. And so what happens is when we wake up, our body produces the most cortisol that we'll have for the day. That helps us get up and get going. And when we don't eat within an hour of waking up, our body senses that as a stressor. And so it starts producing more adrenaline and cortisol and things like that, which raise our blood sugar even more. And so then we could not even eat at all, anything at all, and our blood sugar could be going to the moon, just because the body is kind of in fight or flight. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too, about the fight or flight and how that contributes to weight and things like that. Oh, and then I also briefly mentioned on here, calorie restriction diets like Optavia, very, very horrible. And those are one thing that I am okay with saying they are not for anybody. They are bad for every single body. Aside from the really just processed ingredients in them, the problem is that calorie restriction diets put the body into starvation mode. And what happens with that is it basically tells the body, hey, we are in a famine right now. And so you need to put on some reserves. You need to take any extra that you get and you need to hold it as reserve. Well, in a calorie restriction diet, there aren't any extras. So the body will do whatever it can to hold on to whatever it can. And usually what happens is, and initially this will trigger some digestive issues, a depletion of nutrients. It can trigger autoimmune disease, which I get a lot of emails about people on that diet, and it's triggered autoimmune thyroid disease for them. Gallstones is another thing, rashes, hormone imbalances, leaky gut, loss of muscle mass. Remember, I want to say this really loud and clear. Just because you or somebody that you're following is losing weight, it doesn't mean it's a good thing. A lot of these things, especially juicing, high fruit diets, calorie restriction diets, what people are losing is muscle weight, muscle mass, and that is not good. So that's another problem, and that's really hard to get back. And then what happens is, as soon as somebody goes off of the calorie restriction diet, their body says, oh my gosh, we're in feast mode. We need to pack on the pounds for when there is another famine. So you'll notice this in babies who maybe have tongue tie issues or something where they're not, or their mom has an issue producing breast milk and they just don't monitor their growth or their lack of growth. Anyway, they grow slow, they don't gain enough weight in the beginning. Then at some point when they do start getting enough food, it's almost as if that hormone that tells them when they're full is broken, and they just don't even know when they're full. They can't even feel it anymore because it's the way that the body does this feast or famine thing. And so that's really not a good mode for our body to be in. So tonight we're going to talk about the top factors affecting weight. We're going to cover blood sugar because that is number one. And that is something that if you want to focus on anything, because you want results and you want them quickly, that is going to be what you're going to focus on. That also is the number one thing that is going to be the big ticket to fix the stress adrenal health factor, which is a top factor affecting weight. You might notice in times of stress, not maybe right away, but 6 months to a year down the road, it starts compounding this weight all of a sudden, and you're like, what happened? I've never had a problem with this before. That would be the stress adrenal factor. We're also talking tonight about hormones and how those affect our weight, thyroid as well, and then toxicity, as we kind of briefly talked about. So this is just a little example of kind of some of the telltale signs that we can see where weight is and what body system that might be affected by. This is just a really general overview, but we can see that when it's estrogen, it tends to pack on in the thighs and around the hips. Adrenal is straight to the belly. That cortisol weight really likes to hit the belly. And the thyroid is just an overall weight. So if you notice, just kind of getting like wider, looking bigger boned, that tends to be a thyroid issue. And then of course the beer belly has to do with liver, blood sugar, and that kind of stuff. So number one that we said is going to really be the big ticket to address for weight and metabolism and feeling good, having energy, not being tired, all of those kinds of things, not having food cravings. Now, how are you going to work on optimizing your health and your weight if you have food cravings all the time? You're not. So balancing blood sugar is going to make sure that you're not having these food cravings as well. It's going to eliminate the carb coma, the lack of energy, the brain fog, and those kinds of things that come after eating. And I want to note really quickly, if you're doing something that you think is healthy and you notice those things within 30 minutes to 60 minutes after you eat, consider that it might not be good for you. This is one way that I actually found how Siete products are not blood sugar friendly. I know they're like, no, they're grain free, right? They're all the healthy stuff. No, unfortunately not. They are pure starch, just like other chips. So balancing blood sugar, there are a few ways to do this, and I want to make this as simple as possible. And so if you haven't started with these steps that I've listed in this, you can take a screenshot, make sure that you are starting here. So I'm not even going to say like you need to cut out this food and 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 this food. That you'll figure out as you go. But for now, work on increasing your protein, decreasing refined carbs. We're not going to just say cut out this food. We're going to make sure that the body is still being nourished. And so what macro are we going to swap that out with? We're going to swap it out with protein. Why? Because protein is the most blood sugar friendly thing that you can do. It has the amino acids. It provides so many things for your body to nourish it well. Obviously, we want to aim for really good, clean protein options, and there are lots of those. So we have some resources for you on that in the future that we'll talk about. Also, when you are having carbs, whether it's, bread, even if it's like a sourdough bread, or just those kinds of things like that, eat them last after your veggies and your protein. That will help make a huge difference in keeping your blood sugar stable. No carbs on an empty stomach. I've never really been somebody who even desires to or likes alcohol. And so I was so I never really understood why people would say, I can't have it on an empty stomach. I got to get some food in me first. But now I understand it's the same thing with carbs. If you're eating a lot of carbs and you eat them on an empty stomach, it's just going to put you on a blood sugar roller coaster. It's going to activate all of those things we talked about, the brain fog, the fatigue, the cravings, all of that kind of stuff. Also, the best thing you can do is make sure that you are starting off your day with a very blood sugar friendly meal. And that is going to be a savory meal, not a sweet breakfast, because what you start your day out with is going to set the stage for your whole entire day and how you feel the whole rest of the day. And then when you do exercise, and exercise is absolutely huge, we want to talk about that. You're going to make sure that you are exercising after meals, especially those meals with carbs. If you're like, you know what, I just want to have that ice cream or something that maybe just is pretty carb heavy, and you have it after your meal, you can even help your body even more by just taking a 10-minute walk or some form of active movement. And when I talk about exercise, I want to make sure, because my audience primarily are women who are mothers, who are giving so much of their time and their energy to their family. And so this might not be the case for men, but they are not generally my audience. So for my general audience, one of the things that I want to make sure we note is that because we give so much of our time and we often don't get to pick our sleep and we tend to have a lot of stressors coming at us, we want to ideally choose exercise that's not going to make our heart rate really go up. If you have any adrenal issues, which we'll talk about in a little bit here, you want to make sure that your exercise is not getting your heart rate up. For me, that means not over 160. That's how I worked on healing my adrenal health, because the body senses that as stress, which in some people is fine, but those who've had really tired adrenals that have been overworked, that is too much stress for the body. That's going to cause some issues with blood sugar that are negative and other things like that too. So keep in mind, when I'm talking about this, a lot of people will say, but I'm not diabetic. Okay, but 80% or more of the meals that people eat daily raise blood sugar and put people on the blood sugar roller coaster. And when I say put people on the blood sugar roller coaster, what happens is your body, your blood sugar spikes from a meal that can be, even just like everyday foods that people are eating. Like I said, even siete products and stuff like that, fruits and things like that. And so then when your blood sugar rises, your body, because if you're not diabetic and if you're healthy and things like that, your body is going to pump out a bunch of insulin, which is a fat storage hormone. And it's going to do that in order to get your blood sugar down. This is the body's amazing way of always seeking to maintain homeostasis. The excess insulin, however, this hormone turns into fat to store that extra glucose. I mean, what does our body do with all that glucose? Well, it gets stored, right? The insulin takes it, puts it into our body cells, and it gets stored. And so with every meal, every latte, if we're doing this, then we're just constantly storing glucose and fat in our body. So we're gonna go into that a little bit more as well. One thing I do want to note is I did monitor some farm chores, home chores. I love that you asked this question. Thank you for that. I monitored these things on my glucose monitor to see if they were the kind of activities that would lower my blood sugar after a meal or help it stabilize better. For me personally, they did not, which I was bummed about, because I mean, so many of us are really busy moms. We're always doing chores. And even when I'm out, doing certain things with the animals, dumping 50-pound feed bags into bins and things like that, I was surprised it didn't have the same effect, the same benefits on my blood sugar as just a brisk walk for 10 minutes up and down the driveway. We have a 250-foot driveway, so it's nice. But not that it isn't good for us, but if you're looking to get your blood sugar down from eating, opting for that dessert or something like that, it might not be as effective as a good brisk walk or a nice bike ride or something like that. So the second thing I want to talk about is addressing stress, because stress is fat. Stress is very toxic to our body, and obviously we can't avoid it. And so I want to help you learn how to navigate stress, because stress makes our body produce adrenaline and cortisol, and as much as those are built into us for good reasons, what happens is the problem for a lot of us is that our body is in the constant fight or flight mode. So we have two nervous system modes. We have the parasympathetic, also known as the rest and digest, and we have the sympathetic nervous system mode, which is the fight or flight mode. And generally, we're supposed to be in the parasympathetic rest and digest mode most of the time. The sympathetic fight or flight mode was designed in all of his great wisdom by the Lord to give us what we need in case of a threat. The problem is that we're constantly seeing everything as a threat. So it reminds me of a verse in scripture, and I don't even know where it is. I don't even know what it is exactly, but it just talks about how sometimes knowledge can be a curse. And we have all of this news and all of this access to what's going on everywhere in the world, and what might be coming, and all of this pending doom. And what happens is that, and you add that on top of, babies and toddlers crying, and we're trying to make dinner, and we're running errands, and we're doing all this kind of stuff. Our bodies sometimes don't ever switch out of the fight or flight mode that it's only supposed to be in when there's a serious threat. What happens then is our body is just flooded constantly with cortisol. And this stress hormone is really great at putting on weight, especially in the belly area. And so sometimes that might be, we're just like, even just following different influencers and information on social media, you might be like, well, this person says this and this person says this, and now I don't know what to do. And it's just this constant panic. And then the banks are, all crashing, and we're going into this, and we're doing this and this. And then what happens is we're basically killing ourselves, and we might not even be around if we keep doing this to our body by the time this stuff actually happens. And so when our bodies are in fight or flight all of the time, because it's constantly keeping our cortisol flooding our body, after a while of that, so it might take a while of this, our body gets depleted of the DHEA hormone. This is a hormone building block that is necessary to create our other hormones, progesterone and things like that. Because DHEA opposes cortisol. It kind of tries to keep it in check, but when there's just this flood of cortisol all the time in the body, the DHEA gets worn out. And what I'm seeing is, if we catch it at the beginning, I'll see DHEA levels be really high on someone's lab tests. And then if we've gotten past that point, then the DHEA levels will be low. And that means that cortisol's been running high for a long time, and the body's been in fight or flight mode way too much. The thing about DHEA is it does a lot of great things, but one of my favorite things that it does, it is the muscle building, fat burning hormone. If you notice belly fat and you notice that, wow, I just can't lose weight like I used to be able to, I can't build muscle, that's probably what's going on. It probably goes back to DHEA. This is where we start falling into this vortex of adrenal issues, tired, weight gain, trouble losing weight, and not being able to handle stress. So sometimes when this progresses, you feel like maybe if there's a time where there's stress, a stressful situation, or something that really gets you into just this fight or flight mode, you might really just be knocked out for hours, days, something like that. Just not even being able to handle stress. The number one way to work on this, number one, is you have to balance blood sugars, because When the blood sugar spikes, remember, what goes up must come down. When it comes down, and it comes down faster, the higher it goes, the lower it goes, the faster it comes down. When it's coming down that fast, the body senses that as stress also, and it panics, and it produces adrenaline and cortisol, and it just keeps that process going. And so that is just majorly compounding on top of the psychological stressors and those kinds of things. So number one is balancing blood sugar, like we talked about. And I will speak from my own personal experience that I had done so many things for healing my adrenals for so long. And when I finally worked on balancing blood sugars, that was it. That was the ticket that made it happen really fast. So I'm grateful for that. Also, a couple of things to note on this. We've got to work on making sure that we obviously modify our exposure to stressors. That can be stop following all those pages. Stop following all those people that say the sky is falling. It might be falling. If you can't do anything about it, it's not worth your time. It's not worth your energy. Focus on what you can do, the things that you can do something about. The rest of it is not for you. Also, some emotional release and processing work, which we will talk about. Yes, we will talk about that. And some other things. So that said, let's go on to the, oh, I didn't put that up there. Okay, so some of the other things that we talked about were back here, hormones. So we talked about how stress can inhibit the hormones like progesterone, which is necessary to counter estrogen. If estrogen is out of control because it's not checked by progesterone, then we get this hips and thighs weight gain. Also, thyroid is another one because our thyroid is responsible for our metabolism. And so when our thyroid is under functioning, it slows down, everything slows down. Our metabolism slows down, our digestion slows down, our body temperature regulation slows down, our mental cognition slows down, and things like that. So that is another factor that we see. And if, like I said, if it's the overall like more big bone kind of weight gain, that's something to look into is thyroid testing. Also, toxicity. So we talked about how the more fat cells we have, the more places there are for the body to hold on to toxins. And what happens is that some of these are what we call forever chemicals. And so they're really hard to get out of the body and to detox. And in order to get rid of those fat cells or basically just lose the weight of those, we have to get rid of the toxins. And that can be a challenge as well. So we'll talk about all of that and how to do that. Let's see here. So we talked about balancing blood sugar, Pilates, exercising, stretching, those kinds are really good as well. Bike riding, we talked about that. We talked about addressing stress. Again, this will also help support blood sugar because when we're stressed, our blood sugar runs higher. I've seen it on continuous glucose monitors. It's pretty fascinating. I had a time where I was wearing a glucose monitor and something woke me up in the middle of the night, which is not uncommon in my situation in my life. But this one was I perceived it as very irritating and frustrating, and that raised my stress. And after a bit, when I had got the situation under control or whatever, I went back to bed and I looked at my glucose monitor, and sure enough, my blood sugar that had been riding just fine in the night went like this, and it just went up, just from stress, not from eating anything. So another thing that I didn't cover here is working on some ways to learn to switch to parasympathetic nervous system to rest and digest. So this is especially important when you're going to eat, because if you eat when your body is in fight or flight mode, the body is not sending energy, blood, and things like that to process food, to digest food. It's taking everything away from the normal functions of like digesting food and putting the energy into the muscles. So the body's ready to pounce or whatever it needs to do, right? So one of the ways that I personally like to make sure before my family eats is if we're going to eat and there's just chaos or stress, or if we've just been running and we're running errands and we've got some food, some lunch packed or something like that. There are a couple of things we can do. Diaphragmatic breathing is a really, really great tool. I have actually tested this while I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and I saw it happen on there. I saw it lower and help blood sugar stabilize better. And so if you don't know what diaphragmatic breathing is, that's when you're going to take your deep breath that expands your belly. Instead of sucking it in, you're breathing in and it's expanding your stomach. And then you're going to hold it for a couple of seconds. And then you're going to exhale through your mouth. You're inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth as your belly is going in. That's a very powerful thing that you can learn how to do, and do that in any stressful situation. That will often also make sure that you are switching and just kind of getting your body out of that fight or flight mode. Another thing, other things are cold exposure. Sometimes if you're really, really stressed out, or I've had people really stressed out, I'm like, go jump in the cold pool or something like that. Go take a cold shower. And just some of the things that are self-care. Maybe self-care for you is just taking a calm walk. Or, for me, this putting on my roller skates and just turning on some music and kind of getting in my own calm mode. Another thing is there's some really, really great things that can happen with utilizing aromatherapy with pure essential oils. There's some research out there that showed that this oil called Hung Kwai, which is spelled HONGQ or KUAI, actually helped switch the body from the fight or flight mode to parasympathetic or rest and digest mode. So that is a favorite oil of mine. I carry one in my purse. I keep one at the dinner table, and I will actually just take the cap off and set it in the middle of the table at meal times so that we are breathing that in and helping the body rest and be ready for food. Prayer also, of course, is amazing for that. I don't think it's coincidence that there's a lot of cultures that are traditionally centered around praying before meals. I think there's something powerful to that also. I want to address a couple of the questions in one shot that came in through the chat. I've been talking about continuous glucose monitors. I have some information in my Level Life group on those, because those are prescription only in the US, but there are ways that we can get them. And I know that for some people, it's a difficult option to go after, but I will say that it is one of the most powerful things that you can do. There's been so many people who have said, I started wearing one, seeing how food was affecting me, stress was affecting me. When you're more conscious of it and you can see it, you've got this constant accountability. You've got the kind of accountability that you're not going to get from a human being. It's very powerful accountability. It's very powerful data that's going to tell you when you're stressed, if you don't notice that you're stressed. What I noticed is that when my body was in fight or flight all of the time, I didn't notice it because it was just how I lived. It was how I was all the time. And then when I started learning that and I started switching out of that and I was conscious of it, then I started being conscious of when other people around me are in constant fight or flight and I can feel it. It's exhausting. And I look and I think I was that way all the time. So it's really cool when you can learn to really be conscious of that. And for me, continuous glucose monitoring has helped incredibly well with being conscious of that and seeing that as well. But also pay attention to your breathing. One of my dearest friends told me one time, you don't take deep breaths. You are shallow breathing all the time. If you pay attention to the way that you're breathing, if you're like, or if you just like don't even know how to take a deep breath or have realized you don't even take deep breaths, that might be a sign too. If you do the diaphragmatic breathing that I talked about and you get dizzy, your body might not be used to taking deep breaths. And so that's another thing to pay attention to. Yes, thank you for that, Kimberly. Getting a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, is a very eye-opening, best decision I have made. I agree wholeheartedly. If your goal is really to change your health and to especially just optimize your weight, that's going to be your number one tool. It's going to tell you everything. It's going to bring in all of this information that I've shared with you tonight. You can do it without it. Yes, absolutely. People have for a long time. Oh, and then one other thing I want to talk about this. We talked about this briefly. Modify your exposure to news, social media, contradictory information from this source and this source. And maybe work on that desire to know everything, to have to know what's coming, to have to know what's coming. That's another sign that your body's in fight or flight mode all of the time. Rest in the Lord, right? So I'm actually working on, I want to create a document that you can bring to your doctor that shows the benefits and the medical needs of having a continuous glucose monitor, because a lot of doctors just really don't know about that. They just think it's for diabetes, and they think that only people with diabetes have blood sugar issues, which is absolutely not true. And there's so much new information on that, but they don't usually stay on top of that new information. And so what I find is that they just need some education. And so I really have been wanting to work on something that you can just print off and bring to your doctor. But for now, I guess we're just going to all learn together. I go through levels. My glucose monitors for the month just came today. And that is cash pay though. So for those who are looking for insurance, I will say, if you have to do something, if you have to take some side gig or something to pay for it, it's worth it. It is so worth it. Also, ideal blood sugar levels this is going to be different for everybody. If your blood sugar has been running high for a while, your body might feel weird when it's in ideal ranges. And that's okay. That's something you just have to get used to, but it might just be more of a progress for you. But ideally between 70 and 120, that's where our blood sugar should be. After 140, our body is having permanent organ and nerve damage. But most people go over 140 every single day. And that's where the insulin resistance starts happening, and polycystic ovarian syndrome starts happening, and those kinds of things too. So 70 to 120 is ideal. I am not familiar with Lumen, Kathy, so please give me more information on that if you'd like to. I don't think I've heard of that. So the top supplements. So what I'm sharing with you is basically, my goal is to just really simplify everything as much as possible. So when I've worked on my own health in these areas, and in the clients that I have, and the health scans that I've done, in the lab tests that I've reviewed, I wanted to pick the things that I know are going to make a difference. I don't want you to feel like you have to take 5 million supplements in order to get a tiny bit of results. That's just not realistic. It's not necessary. One of the top products for me, I will say wholeheartedly, unashamedly, is this product called Cortistop from Young Living. Cortistop has been absolutely huge for me in times of stress, to protect my body from the effects of the stress that I'm under. And sometimes, like I said, that is just inevitable and unavoidable, and we can't avoid it. Going through some really difficult circumstances currently. And when I was in the situation where my son was diagnosed and we were being targeted by CPS, and my son almost died and he's in a coma and all of these things, thank God I had Cortistop then. It helps protect our bodies from the effects of stress, all of that cortisol production. Helps minimize that as well. It also contains DHEA, which I will say, there are ways that we can really help optimize our body's production of hormones when they are low, but DHEA is one that I found is extremely hard to get back up on its own without some help. Extremely hard. And so Cortistop helps just give us the DHEA that we need to get back on the right track. Cortisol control on my website, Healthy Families for God, cortisol control contains a blend of relora herbs as well as ashwagandha. This helps also combat our body with stress. This is more of like a long-term combating stress. So that's something that is just, I've been taking every single day since I first started getting it in, morning and night. And it's just helping really just on that long-term basis to combat the effects of stress on my body. Cortisol is kind of like the heavy hitter. And so if I'm going to be in a situation that I know is stressful, even if it's a good stress, because your cortisol goes up when you're, going on roller coasters, or when I'm stepping on stage to speak in front of thousands of people, or things like that, I will take cortisol on the double. And lately, just going through what I've been going through and things like that, I've been taking it every single morning as well. We have glucose control on our website. This is a blend of all of the top nutrients and herbs that have been shown to really help with blood sugar support, blood sugar stabilization, and things like that. I was researching all of them individually, and then I found out that my manufacturer had combined them into one thing. So that was super convenient. Vitamin D is actually one of the top things necessary for hormones, blood sugar, thyroid, adrenal, all of the above. And I'm not talking about just randomly taking vitamin D. I'm talking about making sure you're taking enough to get your body into the range that it needs to be in. Ideally, at least 50 nanograms a milliliter. So test it, don't guess if you can, and also optimize your dosage accordingly. If thyroid is your issue, please look into Thyromin. Please message me. I have some information on that, how to determine your dosage based on your body temperature in the morning and things like that. This is a very precise blend of iodine and some adaptogens for the thyroid. And I have seen amazing things that I really can't talk about on a public setting because the FDA doesn't like that. But I've seen some really amazing things with people for their thyroid on that one. So another thing that I am personally taking every day is Femigen. This is a blend of herbs that help block our body's absorption of environmental estrogens, those toxins that we talked about that like to get stored in the fat cells that are really hard to get rid of. So what that does is it contains these, basically these phytoestrogens that help occupy the estrogen receptors in our body and block our body then from storing those toxic environmental estrogens. So we're going to have estrogens on those receptor sites. Do we want them to be something natural, like from these herbs, or do we want them to be all of the chemicals in the environment that are acting as estrogens in our body? That's my kid's blood sugar monitor, sorry. Thyromin, I would personally be comfortable taking it during pregnancy. Absolutely. Our body tends to need extra thyroid support, but that's something you can definitely research on your own. Let's see here. Oh, no. Right. No. So we do need cortisol to function, but when we get to the point where our body is not able to produce it, our body actually gets to a point where we kind of can't really tolerate it anymore. And we've got to work on healing that part of our body rather than just adding cortisol in, ideally. So we do need some, but generally not like, yes. Stephanie loves cortisol. It does say to do 2 rounds. It does say to take a break on that. But yes, there are many people who definitely need and benefit from taking it more long-term. As with any label, remember that the language on there is required by the FDA because of what's in it, but we know better. We know what our bodies need, and we can utilize just what we're sensing, and we're getting knowledge from the Holy Spirit. So no, many of us take it long-term as well, honestly. I will sometimes take breaks and then get back on it personally. So that's just for me. Progestins Plus, if we go back to the estrogen body shape, we need to get that estrogen balanced. That's where we need to get some progesterone in there. Progestins Plus is incredible if you've never heard of it. It is unlike anything anywhere else ever available. It's a serum. It's not a cream. If you're utilizing a progesterone cream, I would advise you to reconsider just because the cream kind of gets stored in the in the layers, the fatty layers underneath our skin, and just randomly go into our bloodstream just whenever. And so you might be putting it on in the same amount every single day, but it doesn't mean that same amount is going into your bloodstream then, just because of the way that creams are and the way that they're designed. It's very random when they actually go into your bloodstream. Progestins Plus is a serum that has plant extracts in it also that help with the absorption. So that is going immediately into the bloodstream. It's a smaller amount of progesterone, but it works better because it doesn't need as much, because it is absorbed fully into the bloodstream and immediately as well. We talked about hung quiet oil for helping activate the body into the parasympathetic nervous system mode, the rest and digest mode. And Endoflex is something that we didn't talk about. Endoflex is an incredible blend of plant extracts that are proven just the top ones for thyroid, adrenal, and estrogen, progesterone, those kinds of hormones, for all of them. I see that come up a ton on people's scans. So that's just a good one. I just pop a roller top on it and I just roll it on every single day for supporting the entire endocrine system. Progestins Plus is a serum that should be applied generally to the thin areas of the body, thin areas of skin. Some people do it on their neck, their wrists, their abdomen, and I personally like ankles too. Ankles is a really great spot. It tends to be less sensitive, and there's some vital flex points on the ankles for hormones. If you are really sensitive, your skin's really sensitive, you can apply it to the bottom of your feet. As far as how much, how often, every day, or just during your cycle, that's something that everybody's got to figure out for themselves. I can't say one way or the other because everybody is different. But I always just say start with a couple of drops a day and take it from there. Also, we talked about the hormone disruptors, the environmental estrogens. If you are still using body care products and cleaning products and candles with synthetic fragrances and parabens, that's got to go. Those have got to go. Work on ditch and switching those. I know that's a big thing. It can take time. You can do it in steps. That's all good. Use some Femigen in the process so that you can help protect your body from those. And I wanted to briefly touch on alternative sweeteners as a top supplement or product for weight, because these are very powerful for swapping out in your recipes to help make things more blood sugar friendly. My favorite is a sweetener called allulose, A-L-L-U-L-O-S-E. And I will have a link to some of my favorite sweeteners and things like that available in my newsletter. But that is my favorite one. There's, you can actually get just a regular monk fruit one as well. I know that some people are concerned about erythritol, which I'm not personally. But if you wanted to just get monk fruit, you can. I personally love stevia still, and I'm using that as well. So those are some options for you. I will actually have all of these resources listed in my next email newsletter. So if you're subscribed to my email newsletter, I'm going to have links for all of these resources to help you along your way. And if you're not subscribed, you can head over to my website, healthyfamiliesforgod.com, and then scroll to the bottom and you can subscribe to my free email newsletter. It goes out every Sunday night. Thanks to, oh yes, I do have somebody, I have a virtual assistant. She's amazing. Thanks to her, that newsletter goes out every single Sunday night. And so we will have links in there for a lot of the stuff that we talked about to get you some more information. The Leveled Life Facebook group, that's where we talk all things blood sugar. So you're going to learn what foods spike blood sugar, what foods don't, how to make a smoothie that doesn't spike blood sugar, because most of them do. How to get a continuous glucose monitor, how to read it, glean from those of us who are wearing them and what we're sharing. If you can't get one, or if you can get one, pop in there and share what you're learning too. I love when people do that. By the way, my love language is acts of service. So that kind of stuff really means a ton to me. I love when people join in and share what they're learning as well. I do, like I said, have an adrenal and hormone class on YouTube already. Those are two separate classes. You can check those out on my YouTube channel. I have a Detox 101 ebook on my website. I think I still have that one at $1.99 marked down. And this is going to help you understand how the body detoxes and how you don't need to do a bunch of detox products in order to help detox certain things, but just support the body with nutrients. You can also check out my Aromatherapy 101 email class if you're brand new to that, and that will give you some basics to understand how it all affects our health and our mental health, our physical health, and all those kinds of things. I also have a reversing insulin resistance document that's going to help for those with PCOS and other metabolic issues. I'm working on an upcoming class on emotional processing and release to add that to our stress life and our adrenal health and our mental health and those kinds of things. And then for those who need more information after all this, I try to make sure that we have lots of free information available for you, because I want your money going towards supplements. Thank you to those of you who support my store, by the way. And also going towards things like continuous glucose monitors and things that are just really, really going to have a profound impact on your health. After that, if you would still like additional help, I do have a link at the top of my Facebook page and on my website under the contact page on how you can schedule an appointment. And that is it for tonight. And we are at exactly almost an hour. So thank you so much for joining me. This will be up on the YouTube channel tomorrow. You are welcome to share it however and wherever you would like. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all of your amazing questions. And thank you for just adding to the community. I am honestly so grateful for each of you. I know your names. I see your names. When your names come through on orders, I thank the Lord for you. I pray for you. I'm just so grateful for you and for this community. So I hope that this gave you something back, and I hope that it blessed you tonight. All right, blessings to you all. I will see you later.